The meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping today is actually a new chapter in India-China ties. India and China are not fighting. The days of Galwan are over, right? So there is a larger message in that. What you will see further is that the ties will actually go forward towards normalization. Two meetings that have happened today. One is a meeting with President Xi Jinping. The second meeting is equally important. See, the meeting with President Putin, that is tomorrow, is an equally important meeting because India-Russia ties are very, very close. That the world is getting a message that three big powers, 3 out of 4, are together. And the three are converging. The Americans may call it a Modi war, but Prime Minister Narendra Modi has always been for peace and dialogue.
Hello and welcome. You're watching the Hindustan Times. I'm Abhishek Singh. After years of looking at each other with suspicion and even skirmishing, the elephant and the dragon have come together. Prime Minister Modi is in China, just hours after his visit to Japan to attend the SCO meet. After his meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping, the geopolitical chessboard looks very different from how it did the same time last year. Because remember, all this is happening after Trump's tariffs on India came into force just days ago. Relations are being cast anew. To discuss the meaning and implications for India in particular, I'm joined by Shishir Gupta, Executive Editor, Hindustan Times. Namaskar, sir. So, Sir, Prime Minister Modi is in China. The world is looking at this visit and paying very close attention. After, of course, just like I said in the introduction, India and China have not exactly been on very friendly terms. But this meeting, to some extent, will assuage whatever that suspicion was, will address it. How do you see this meeting? Because a couple of steps have already been announced, including the resumption of Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, direct flights, and so on.
The meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping today is actually a new chapter in India-China ties. And a new chapter that was actually, that comes after the May 2020 PLA transgression in East Ladakh, after which the ties went into a deep freeze. And then the first thaw came when Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping met on October 23rd, 2024 at Kazan. Now, this meeting is a way forward, a positive momentum that has been imparted by the two leaders. I mean, it's a summit level meeting. And here, what actually happens is that the two leaders try and understand each other. This is not about, what are the outcomes. This is a summit level meeting. Now, in this, what has happened is that what you will see further is that the ties will actually go forward towards normalization and will try and go what was pre-April 2020. Now, one of the first indicators, that is, if the ties are really going in a very positive direction, is if India and China can actually demarcate the border in the middle sector and declare it an international boundary. That will be historic. And that is where it is proceeding towards, because the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and the visiting National Security Advisor of China, that is Wang Yi, both had discussed this and had come to an agreement that the two will actually look at places where there are minimum differences on the border. So today's meeting is basically giving them a sort of a go-ahead by the two leadership, that go ahead and do what you have to do to make the ties normal. Right? Now, when we say ties normal, is that this is an event which is an India-China ties. The world may see it differently, but as far as India is concerned, India is looking at China because the two want to have a stable border. And from a stable border, you'll have a stable relationship. From a stable relationship, you will have a way forward relationship. And that's what the two sides are looking. Now, to say that, this will have an impact on what President Trump is doing, that is a bit far-fetched because that is a separate relationship. The optics may convey this, but that's a separate relationship, and we would like to keep the two in two different boxes.
Sure, but then there is some merit to that argument, of course, the optics that you were referring to, and that is that, this kind of progress, this breakneck speed at which India is strengthening the existing ties. For example, just before China, Prime Minister Modi visited Japan. And of course, now China, and then tomorrow he'll be meeting President Putin as well. And all of this is happening when the world is dealing with Donald Trump and his tariffs. China is, of course, dealing with those tariffs. India, some extra tariffs on account of, the fact that we buy oil from Russia. So there is some merit in that argument indeed.
See, if you look at the larger picture is that China today faces 55% tariff from US, and this can go into triple digits on November 10th. India is facing 50% tariff. Russia is actually facing sanctions for the Ukraine war. So you have three leaders of three big countries, three big powers who are under pressure from US, right? Now, the issue over here is you look at the leadership. You have President Putin. President Putin is one who has decided to revive the glory of the Russian Federation post Boris Yeltsin. If you were to describe President Xi Jinping, the best description comes from what President Xi Jinping told another world leader. He said, Mao Zedong gave us respect. Deng Xiaoping gave us economic empowerment. So when he asked him, how would you want to be remembered as in the history? He said, as a unifier. So here is another tall leader who's looking to unify China, right? Then you have Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Prime Minister Narendra Modi again is looking at India first, is trying to make India a developed country in 2047. So you have three nationalistic leaders who are there together facing pressure from another nationalistic leader who's trying to make America great again. So this is the optics of the whole show. And this is what is happening over there. Now, the point is that the world is getting a message that three big powers, 3 out of 4, are together. And the three are converging. I mean, India and China are not fighting. The days of Galwan are over, right? So there is a larger message in that.
And what is that message, especially to the US?
See, the point in this is that, US will have to reconsider seriously as to what it wants to do. And it cannot take unilateral steps, particularly against powers who are known for their strategic autonomy. They are independent powers, and that is what the message is all about. Now, whether US gets the message or not, that is for you, President Trump, to decide. But getting together of three important leaders who are actually right now the only three who are standing up in their own way. I mean, Brazil is there, but the only three who are standing up and holding their ground. Well, it is for President Trump to take a call on that.
Right. And talking about President Trump, he was, of course, expected to visit India for the Quad meeting. And there are reports now that he, of course, would not be coming to India. So this chance wherein he could have, again, discussed the kind of friction that we saw in India-US relationship, especially after Operation Sindoor and this entire discussion over tariffs, that there was this opportunity perhaps wherein President Trump could have discussed things with Prime Minister Modi, and the relationship between US and India perhaps could have been brought back on a path which was a path that we were already on.
See, I'm not too sure whether President Donald Trump has decided to call off his visit to India for the Quad summit. Okay. Because Quad is a separate box. Quad is about Indo-Pacific. Quad has nothing to do with bilateral ties, so to speak. It's a multilateral play where you have Japan and Australia who both are close to India. And let me also tell you that, I mean, trade aside, India and US still have a very good relationship, and the two leaders, they can talk to each other when they decide to pick up the phone. So I'm not too sure about really what is happening in Quad, okay, right? But what I'm saying as far as China goes, there are two meetings that have happened today. One is a meeting with President Xi Jinping. The second meeting is equally important. The second meeting was with Tsai Shi. Now, he is the man who's supposed to be the so-called chief of staff of President Xi Jinping. He is the first ranking member of the Secretariat of the Communist Party. He's a Politburo standing committee member. He's a very important member, and people believe that he's actually the shadow of President Xi Jinping. To have a meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, it is here the mechanics of the thing would have actually come out in the open. And the two leaders would have talked on this. So what has happened today in China is something very, very significant. You must remember one thing, Abhishek. When there was a PLA transgression on May 2020, and what happened subsequently, the freezing of ties, hardly anybody came to India's aid. So when I say this is a separate box, India does not need a third country to deal with China. India can deal with China. And if you look at the statement of the Ministry of External Affairs, it says very clearly that we are not looking towards a third country. So this is not about US. This is purely India, China. But the optics which comes out is far bigger than that.
Another key meeting which Prime Minister Modi will hold will be with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Talk to us about the significance of this meeting because this is again, of course, going to happen in China.
See, the meeting with President Putin, that is tomorrow, is an equally important meeting because India-Russia ties are very, very close. I mean, they continue to remain close and they will remain close come what it may happen. You had a meeting where National Security Advisor went to Moscow. It was followed by S. Jaishankar. Now, the meeting between the National Security Advisor and his counterpart was on military ties. The meeting of S. Jaishankar and the Deputy Prime Minister Manturo was on the other things. I mean, it is basically economic joint commission meeting. It was there where you discuss other issues also. Now, the meeting tomorrow will further cement the ties. But what is important is that before this meeting was a call from Vladimir Zelensky, the Ukrainian president,
yes,
to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So Ukraine will be a very important issue in this, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi will obviously convey what President Zelensky has said, right? And India has made it very clear. I mean, the Americans may call it a Modi war, but Prime Minister Narendra Modi has always been for peace and dialogue, for solving the Ukraine war since it started in February 2022.
So the path to peace does go through Delhi, but not in the manner Navarro has been saying.
Well, Navarro can say what he wants to say. The point over here is that India still gets 62 to 64% of its hardware from Russia. India is still looking for top technology from Russia when it comes to military technology. I mean, India cannot afford to be in a place where its main rivals are equipped with the best of arms, and while India is actually left dealing with its own stuff. So India-Russia ties are going to be close. What is significant is that India-China ties have gone close and they are destined now to move further, particularly when President Xi Jinping says that the elephant and the dragon have to come together. That's a very significant statement, though they have been making this statement time and again.
Yeah.
But coming at this stage, talking about fair trade, talking about not being rivals, all this adds up to show that India and China can definitely move forward, try and reduce the trade deficit, try and increase cooperation, go back to military dialogue, go back to military cooperation. If all that happens, if India is secure from the north, India can tackle anybody.
Right. So apart from weapons, technology and trade and oil, of course, what India has perhaps needed, and that has been a consistent partner, a consistency in relationship, and that has been the case with Russia. Perhaps that is where, US also needs to step up.
Absolutely. I mean, it is US now sees what is happening over. I mean, this is not something which is hidden. These meetings are taking place and it's open like that. And if you see the warmness of the handshake, and if you will see the way President Putin will be meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi, you have to understand what you're dealing with. And, India is keeping totally quiet. It's been patient about everything that is coming out of US. It is for US to take a call on that. And remember one thing, President Donald Trump one day accused the intel chief of being a Chinese agent. And a week later, he called him the best CEO possible. So with US, anything can happen at any point of time. It takes time for China to move. And China today has moved.
And that is significant. But on that note, thank you so much for taking the time and, of course, talking to us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.